because what codependents do is they get their worth from other people and how other people treat them, how well other people are doing, if other people are in a good mood. They love to fix it. They are people pleasers, and most times they're perfectionists, and they love to fix. Shh. Welcome to the Secret Life Podcast. Tell me your secret. I'll tell you mine. Sometimes you have to go through the darkness to reach the light. That's what I did. After 12 years of recovery in sex and love addiction, I finally found my soulmate, myself. Please join me in my novel, Secret Life of a Hollywood Sex and Love Addict, a 4-time bestseller on Amazon. It's a brutal, honest, raw, gnarly ride, but hilarious at the same time. Check it out now on Amazon. Welcome to Secret Life Podcast. I'm Brianne Davis-Gantt. Today I'm pulling back the curtains of all kinds of human secrets. We'll hear about what people are hiding from themselves or others. You know those deep, dark secrets you probably want to take to your grave? Or those lighter, funnier secrets that are just plain embarrassing? Join me each week as we take a deep dive into one subject matter, exploring the how, what, when, where, and why of it all. Get ready for a more focused, more revealing journey of the human experience. This is Secret Life, and I'm excited for you to join the ride. Today, we are talking about dun dun dun. Codependency is a bitch. It is something you keep giving to somebody else because you have a void inside and you need there to give you worth, validation, the reason you're there to fix it. Codependency fucking sucks, let's just say. And if you are a codependent, God bless you. It is a difficult attachment style and pattern that really fucks people up, because what codependents do is they get their worth from other people and how other people treat them, how well other people are doing, if other people are in a good mood. They love to fix it. They are people pleasers, and most times they're perfectionists, and they love to fix. Now, there are really 4 to 5 types of codependent personality types. We have the passive codependent, the active codependent, the cerebral codependent, the obvious codependent, and the anorexic codependent. So here's how I break them down. The passive codependent, it like secretly buries anger and resentment with a persona of so much empathy, so much compassion, and they are so generous, almost too generous. It's almost like the sacrificed martyr, right? The one that's like a victim to the circumstances, but they make you feel bad, but they do it with a smile on their face. Because underneath it's this burning rage that happens, and they can't, everything they do is because they've done it. Does that make sense? And then there's the active codependent. They're aggressive, and they're in their pursuit to control and manipulate narcissists, and they act like they love and respect and care for them, but they're delusional. They're totally delusional because they believe that constant supervision and counter aggressiveness is justifiable and effective in the relationship with a narcissist. So they actively like try to fix the other person. Cerebral codependents, they devour education. They love transformative experience, that they can overcome a narcissist abuse or a toxic relationship or fixing somebody else. They have this form of delusion where nothing will ever be resolved, that the trauma and the core shame is the responsibility that they're going to suffer. Obvious codependent lives by this ignorance is bliss. Oh, those are my favorite. They're like the Southern ones. They like act like everything is okay, and they disassociate from reality. They disassociate from problems. They turn a blind eye. They have this delusional belief What is not seen is not there. And they'll just smile through it. And then the anorexic codependent, they starve themselves from normal emotions and sexual intimacy while they have control over, um, seemingly protective of their partner or their child. And as soon as the no romance diet ends, they become so insatiable, for hunger with that toxic person that they'll go back to, like, they'll withhold sex and emotional intimacy. And the moment that it ends for them or they see it's not working anymore, they turn insatiable. And so that really is harmful for the other person because it gives mixed messages. So those are all the types of codependencies that are out there, but the gist of them, they have a tendency to do more than their share. They literally love to pack in their schedules, do more for the other person, almost there's an insatiableness to do more. Then there's a huge fear of rejection and abandonment in relationships or losing a relationship. So they hold on really tight and they attach very strongly. A lot of anxious attachment style person, that attachment, are codependents. And then they have this overwhelming need to recognize things, talk about things, be reassured about things, and they really want to make the person almost overshare themselves. Then they have, so I always say narcissists are controlling, but I believe narcissists and codependents are controlling. Codependents are just as controlling as a narcissist. So I think they have this strong desire to control others. So a codependent in a toxic relationship will want to change the feelings and emotions, mood of the other person. Like they can't handle not having that power and control over them. There's, like I said, a huge fear of rejection. They tend to apologize to keep the peace, which I think is a very manipulative thing because they're usually not sorry. They act sorry or just want it to like smooth over, but underneath the resentment is still there. So that's a controlling thing. Like, I'll apologize just to smooth it out because I don't want him or her or whoever to be in that mood. They are the worst keeping and creating boundaries. The absolute worst. They cannot do it. I say, keep this boundary, and majority of them come back later and they're like, I did it. And I'm like, yeah, why didn't you hold that boundary? Because internally, they don't want the boundary because it makes them feel out of control. A boundary for a codependent is actually scary because they're showing up for themselves. They're putting a clear boundary between themselves and the other person. And a part of them loves to enmesh with the other person, the toxic person they're with, or the child. They love to enmesh. Difficulty making decisions. They wishy-washy is what I call it. They love to wishy-washy things. Like you won't get a straight answer, or 1 minute will be one thing and then the next minute they'll change their mind. They can be a little dishonest, which is wishy-washy, I think is dishonest, and doing things that you know will make the other person happy, but not you, but you'll still do them, which is another manipulation because honestly, you don't want to do it. And you're only doing it to make the other person happy because you want to control their mood. And lastly, they are horrible at communicating their feelings, communicating things in a relationship. They legit don't do well communicating. All right. There are some do's and don'ts, right, to codependency. And I'm going to first go into what makes you a codependent, right? So, all those things I just said, but also they hate to upset people. They want to fix other people's problems and they'll focus more on other people's problems than their own because then they don't have to look at their own issues. They allow people to dictate how they feel about themselves. So, they take other people's criticism really to heart. Like I said, trouble with boundaries. They find themselves overworking and overscheduling. Those overdoers, if you're an overdoer and you're always scheduling things, look at that. That is a huge codependent act that you can never sit still in yourself. So you're always doing. They have trouble with intimacy. They have trouble with trust. They have high levels of guilt. They can be self critical. They can go into their own shame. They ignore their own feelings. Most of the time, they don't even know they're having a feeling or emotion because they're so worried about everybody else's feelings. That's when I get out the feeling chart for them and I make them, how do you feel? They call themselves like a sidekick sometimes, or like they're the ones behind the scenes making it happen. A lot of old school women likes to say they're the neck to the husband's head. That's a codependent saying. If you've ever heard anybody say that, that means they have control over the person. So they're the neck to their head. They don't ask for help. They hide their honest thoughts and feelings because they're not acceptable even to themselves. And they believe their worth is determined by not, they get their worth from other people, everything by not doing something or doing something for the other person. So those are the things, and breaking this pattern, oh my God, is the one of the worst patterns to break. Codependence, getting them to detach from other people is so difficult. So breaking the patterns. So here's an example. Say they deny their own needs. I then push them into having self-care, prioritizing self-care, prioritizing their nervous system. Sometimes they don't even realize they have a nervous system or when they're not emotionally regulated. So I really have them focus on their nervous system and taking care. What makes their body feel good? Neutralizing, not getting high or low because of somebody else. Another how I help them is they compulsively try to fix or take care of others, right? So then I get them, can they make their own choices? Do you actually have to say anything? Can you just listen? Can you not provide any feedback? Did they ask for feedback? No, they didn't. Nobody asked you for feedback. So zip it. Zip, zip, zip. So getting a codependent to be quiet and just listen and not give feedback is a huge deal for them. And that's how you start breaking that pattern. Let's say the seeking approval from others. I have them start valuing themselves. How do I feel about what I just did? Am I proud of myself? Do I feel good about what I just did? Am I proud of that project? And not ask anybody else for their opinions about what you just did. How do you feel? When they're judgmental or critical of themselves, I have them practice obviously compassion, but self preservation. When you judge yourself, you're destroying yourself. When you're critical of self, you're abusing yourself. So I said, are you protecting yourself from your thinking, from that shadow part of you that wants to destroy you, from that internal family parts, the firefighter that is like the perfectionist, the drug addict, the alcoholic, whatever it is, that thing that wants to destroy us. I ask, are you practicing allowing that part to have a voice, but not take over your nervous system? And the last one, the people pleasing. Oh my God, they love to people please. I have them work on that first question I almost give everybody. Where did you lose your sense of self? That's the first question I usually give any client I work with. And looking at that, none of them have a sense of self. They've always got their self worth from outside things and accomplishments and goals and bigger, better things, learning more, doing all these things. And I say, okay, let's practice finding your sense of self. And I even do simple things like, do you like this? Do you like that? No. Okay. What about this? What is your favorite color? Let's bring back joy from your childhood. And examples like that, I help the codependent reestablish who they are, because this really starts with generational trauma. Most codependents have a parent that's a codependent, came from a toxic relationship, a dysfunctional family, has addiction in their family usually, because codependency is an addiction, just so you know. You're addicted to other people giving you your worth. That's what it is. So it's a form of addiction, but people are like, no, no, I'm not an addict. No. Yeah, no, my father was an addict or my grandfather was. And then I'm like, okay, but what got passed down and you went to people to get your worth, to numb out yourself, to not feel your own feelings, to focus on someone else. That is an addictive tendency. All right, so let's figure out how we cure this shit. So that was one way to start. But then I have them go some authentic cures. It is okay for a codependent to admit their childhood was tough. To get a codependent to take off the rose-colored glasses of their childhood and their parents and the mother wound and the father wound, it's almost impossible. It's like pulling teeth. So that's the number one thing I go for is looking at the childhood, pulling from the childhood, taking the rose-colored glasses off and really looking at it and go, wow, that damage was done. And that is why I turned to this type of person to fix this person, to get my worth from this person. Then it's okay to admit your parents weren't perfect. Yay! Yay! Freedom to those parents. They're flawed human beings. They usually came from shit. I mean, all of us came from, if you're in the United States or anywhere, if you look back, addiction ran through families for a long time. Religion, overly religious, what society put on women, what society put on men, all that stuff is generational trauma, abuse, all that stuff. So it is okay for me to say, or a codependent to be like, my parents weren't perfect. They're not. They're flawed human beings. It's okay to admit that you do seek approval to feel safe. Because most codependents will be like, no, I'm not seeking approval. I'm just trying to help. I'm just trying to fix. I just want them to be in a better mood. But I know I'm sitting here and I'm listening and I'm just giving little tidbits of advice. No, you're not. You're trying to fix. And it's okay to admit to yourself that you looked for other people to feel safe, because internally you don't feel safe by yourself. So I have them spend a lot of alone time to be alone with themselves. And most of them are like, it's like, "Ee." It's okay to admit that you don't always know how you feel or what a feeling feels like or what an emotion feels like in your body, because you've probably ran from it for so long. It's also okay to admit you're afraid of someone disapproving of you or not liking you. All people are like, I don't want to be the bad guy. And I try to help teach people is you're going to be the bad guy. Not everybody's going to look at you as a great person. Not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's going to agree with you. Not your face might just annoy somebody, or your voice. It is okay. You are not going to be approved by everybody on this planet. And that is okay. And if you're afraid of it, it's okay. And walking through that emotion of not being liked. Lastly, it is okay to admit when you get angry or have resentments, that you don't push a boundary away, you pull a boundary closer. So if there's anger, it's resentments, it's okay, but we got to hold the boundary. And there's parts of you that doesn't want the boundary, and that is okay to admit that you don't like this boundary. You don't want to hold this boundary. It terrifies you. So let's go. Before we finish, let's go to the last advice, the don'ts for a codependent that is trying to get better, trying to break this pattern to be a whole person. Here we go. Don't offer any advice unless someone asks. Listen. We even say, my friend and I, who's been in recovery a long time, we say, do you want me to listen or do you want some feedback? You can use that, but mostly just don't offer advice unless somebody asks you. Don't judge, nag, scold, or complain all the time. Don't manage people who make bad choices. Let them make bad choices. That is their path in life. They have to. They get to learn a lesson from that. Even with my son, and I'm not a codependent, but parts of me is like, I don't want him to make a bad decision or a bad choice. But sometimes he has to, because that's being a human and an adult. Not, well, he's not an adult, but growing up, you're going to make bad choices. And we learn from those. We learn from those dark times. And a codependent doesn't want that person to have a dark time. And it negates their evolution. Don't isolate. Don't make empty threats. Don't make empty threats. Back it up with a boundary. Don't ruminate. Don't spiral in your head over what someone said or what they're not doing. Don't always make what other people do about you. Don't be obsessed with anybody. Remember, not attachment, connection. You're connected to people, but you're not attached to them or how they are. Don't overprotect people either. Stop making excuses for people. Stop enabling people. Don't judge or should have yourself. You should have done it this way. You should have done it that way. You did it that way because that's what you had to learn. That was your lesson. And don't feel guilty for self-care or alone time. Look at me. I just spent a week in the desert without my son and my husband. It was great. I needed it. And I didn't feel guilty about it. So you don't either. And lastly, don't allow abuse and don't sacrifice yourself or your values, because What a codependent, if you keep doing that, you'll keep getting the same thing. And the people you pull in are usually very toxic and selfish. They're narcissistic. It's all about them. Majority is narcissists and codependents, but they're avoidance and you're chasing them. And don't lose yourself in anybody else anymore. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that helps. If you're struggling out there with codependency, just know you are enough and you can build a bigger sense of self. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you want me to talk about anything. Send me some questions over to secretlifepodcast@icloud.com. Until next time. Thanks again for listening to the show. Please subscribe, rate, share, or send me a note at secretlifepodcast.com. And if you'd like to check out my book, head over to secretlifenovel.com or Amazon to pick up a copy for yourself or someone you love. Thanks again. See you soon.